Hello, brothers and sisters. My name is Richard Koritz. I'm proud to be co-host with an old friend, an old brother, even though I'm the older brother, and a hell of a good union brother, as well as part of the brotherhood of man, by which we mean brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity, is O.W. Sweeney. And I always feel better, shoulder to shoulder with this brother.
We just want to give a little thought to the people. That's all.
Well, and we want to give a little encouragement for the people to move in the right direction.
And one way to do that is to talk about the North Carolina Triad Jobs
with Justice.
We can reach us at 336-272-2758.
And we're going to get right to an old friend of the show, an old friend of ours.
That's right.
The last name does not begin to describe the man. Eric Fink, professor of law at Elon University here in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we're very pleased, Eric, to have you on the show again.
Always good.
Back again,
always,
brother. Back
always
again.
so happy
Yeah.
to be.
And we've loaned you one of
Yes.
our buttons since you had
No, you
yours.
didn't have to mention that.
hiding
You left it
with
alone.
I could have. But you know how you and I are.
So I'm a professor. I'm supposed to be absent-minded. It's true. I have a button and I forgot to bring it, and these folks took good care.
And on today's show, we've been discussing briefly, we've got at least two major news developments this week that we want to discuss together and especially get your views on, brother.
And getting the audience to think about what's going on.
Exactly. And the two events, not necessarily in order of importance, but connected to each other, are the effort by the Trump-led fascistic forces to tarnish the outstanding work that's been done by District Attorney Fani Willis of the Fulton County, Georgia, and to try to push her back, and in that process trying to bully and push back all of the indictments, all of the, basically just about all proved already by by anyone that sees, hears, and thinks at all. The criminality.
For themselves.
Exactly. The criminality of the Trump forces. And so we want to especially talk with you, brother, our brother professor, about Fani Willis and the fine job that she has led among the people fighting for justice in Georgia.
I think fine job was an insult. The great job that she's
Well,
doing.
you know what? I'm going to agree with you. And then the other thing, very connected to it, through the villain in this piece, is the fact that
Villain or criminal?
both. But
Why choose?
as we say in Spanish, los dos. But anyway, and that is also that there was what apparently was an outstanding position put forth by the two Democratic appointed and one Republican appointed judges of the three-panel judge of the appeals court in Washington, D.C., in which they ruled that Donald Trump, not President Trump, but more accurately should be described as they described him, Citizen Trump. And for those in our age bracket, OW, we know that at least it conjured up for me, and I think it might do the same for you if it hadn't already, the great
Plain,
film,
ordinary citizen.
the great film, Citizen Kane, in which Orson Welles, which many regard as the greatest Hollywood film, at least of all time, and Citizen Kane, in which the real William Randolph Hearst, who had a large role in creating the Spanish-American War and the invasion of Cuba, specifically in 1898. But the exposure of the real William Randolph Hearst through that fictional Citizen Kane. But when I heard that the three-panel appeals judges referred to him as Citizen Trump, because in that sense, for Trump being called a citizen when he really wants to be anointed king is
dictator.
Well, that's what it amounts for us. Yes. But I think that was a great contribution as well. So we do want to get Brother Fink to comment on both things, and we could start with maybe whichever you'd like to.
Let's take the most, let's take the immunity issue first, since this is the one you're just talking about, and I think we can, then move from that to the Georgia case. So, look, we've got the big picture. There are multiple cases that have been brought against Trump himself and his minions, right? His team of backers, who, over their efforts to try to, overthrow a valid election. The broad shadow that they tried to cast over the election results itself, and specifically the insurrection on January. I'm very bad. It was the January 6th. That specific incident. And so there are these various cases that are being brought, including the case in Georgia that we'll turn to. But in the Trump and his co-defendants, his co-conspirators,
his gang,
his gang, they've really, I suppose there's one level at which you have to admire their creativity, or as my grandmother would say, their chutzpah, in coming up with any and all arguments to try to derail this prosecution, and especially because, look, we've got an election coming up now in less than 9 months, in which Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee, barring some, unlikely, or perhaps unforeseen yet development. And it's very clear that at least their strategy is not necessarily to defeat these on the merits, and to prove that they didn't violate the law, which is what you might think they would do if they thought they didn't violate the law, but just to derail it and to stall and delay. Sometimes people put another word in there, but we'll leave that one out. To stall and delay, so that the election can come, and what they hope, and what Trump and the rest of them hope, is that then he'll win, and then once he's president, he can pardon himself, right? Or he can reassert his immunity. So let's get back to the specific immunity issue. It is established, while the president is in office, the president of the United States cannot be put on trial, in a criminal case. Okay, and there are valid reasons for that. You couldn't have someone who's exercising the responsibility of the president while they're facing criminal charges. They would have to step down, and if it turned out that they were acquitted, this could also undermine democracy, right? Trump's argument, among his many arguments, his argument was, for anything he did while he was president, he has this absolute immunity, not just that you can't bring the charges while he's occupying the office, but ever, for the rest of his life. He just gets a free get-out-of-jail card. And in fact, he has taken this position so strongly that in this case that just was decided, one example that they gave was essentially that if he were to order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate one of his political rivals, like another candidate, that he would be immune from prosecution for that murder. Okay? Now, this is really chilling. It's especially chilling, and I know that you are familiar with this. Maybe some other viewers are and aren't. We can think of plenty of countries where that scenario is not just a weird, extreme-sounding hypothetical, but the sort of thing that has happened and continues to happen in countries where there is weak, if any, democracy of fascistic or otherwise dictatorial or aspiring dictators literally having their rivals murdered, right, to get them out of the way, and in fact then claiming, oh, I'm above the law, right? So this is the fact that they picked that example is actually really chilling, right? Okay, bottom line is, the court said, no, you're wrong, okay, flat out, you're wrong. That you do not have this absolute immunity. You are now Citizen Trump. You're no longer President Trump. If you committed crimes while you were occupying the Oval Office, you can face criminal charges for those crimes. Now, I should add, there are additional issues here, and we're not getting too much into the details of them. One important issue here is the case involves this January 6th insurrection and his attempt to interfere with or pressure the election officials in various states to not to certify the votes or to not to send the Biden electors to the Electoral College. The court, Trump claimed that was an exercise of his constitutional authority as the chief executive, right? So when the president acts in his role as chief executive, rather than while I happen to be president, I'm drunk driving or something else, right? That makes a difference. The president may, even after leaving office, might still have some kind of immunity for that, because again, it's not clear that you always want courts to be kind of second guessing, what the president is doing to fulfill their constitutionally, given authority. But the court said, it's not. Elections are part of the president's job, right? It's not the president's job to have anything to do with elections. You're just a candidate for the election. And it's certainly not the president's job to speak to state officials and try to persuade them one way or the other how they should certify the results. So the court said even if you would have this immunity still for stuff you did as president, signing an executive order or something, this ain't it, okay? So that's really important. And as we said, the court it was a very strong opinion, and they really showed, I think, a degree of impatience that you don't usually see from federal judges who tend to write in very polite terms. So that's huge.
I want to add to what you said. You laid it out, I think, quite clearly, and that we appreciate that. But the thing that I get the biggest kick out of, and I hope that particularly our viewers that have chanced to support Trump and Trumpism will really consider this very seriously. And that is that in the impeachment trial, the Trump lawyers used the argument, with Trump's approval, to state that, you can't treat him this way around this, because you'll have a chance when he's out of office to then bring charges against him. And now the lawyers who are different, at least he hired different lawyers to say the opposite thing now, which was these people who have absolutely no decency. And they said that Trump couldn't be convicted of anything because he had not been first impeached.
Right.
So it was so these ones, the first ones said, don't impeach him because you're going to get a chance when he's out of office to try him and convict him. And now that he's in a position to be tried and convicted,
what you're saying to me,
you should have impeached him
is the
first.
reason those lawyers quit, the ones that quit, it's for that exact reason, so they can come up with another BS story.
Well, or
it's
possibly
interesting,
because Trump doesn't pay them because he tends to not pay people.
But wait a minute, but no, it's even worse than that, O'Donnell, because these arguments are exactly contradictory of each other. And the only thing they have in common is the same criminal is using both of those arguments to try to protect himself.
Exactly. And I will say within the law, this is part of what I hear, within the law, lawyers are allowed to, and defendants in criminal cases, you're not necessarily boxed in to an argument you had in the last case, right? You can take a different view, but that's a legal rule. People as voters, in assessing the credibility and seriousness of this person to be fitness to be president, we certainly, in the court of public opinion, can convict them of this hypocrisy. Now, nothing about Donald Trump's life has, would suggest that he has any problem being hypocritical. I don't think he cares, but we should care.
Right.
And yeah, this is another important point. Yes, about the impeachment.
But that seems to be the idea behind those states disqualifying him from being on the ballot. But yet they're saying this here, but then they say states have rights, and now they're saying the states don't have that right.
They have rights except when they don't, and they have rights except when they protect the people who we don't want to be protected. There's plenty of hypocrisy to go around here.
Yeah.
Plenty of
But-
arguments of
But
convenience.
speaking of
Yeah.
hypocrisy, we want to get on to basically, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
a defense of the outstanding citizen,
Yeah.
Fani Willis, and the way her character is being assassinated, with the hope that the Trump bashers, that they can remove this most serious citizen.
Yeah.
So I want to say, first of all, Eric, because you didn't hear this in our last show, but I made the point that she went in as district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, and I think it was the next day was when she heard that this recording of Trump and his gang, as you and I see them, OW, were ganging up on Georgia Secretary of State,
Yeah.
Raffensperger, who himself was a Republican who had voted for Trump. And Trump and those gangsters.
I don't think
were
he
trying
only
to
voted for
intimidate.
Trump, but I think he was one of the mega Trumps.
Well, that I don't remember that, whether he was or not. But he was honest enough, and I'm going to use that word. No, he was honest enough that he was taping the conversation that he had with Trump on that phone when Trump said, all I'm looking for is exactly the 11,780. I think that was the right
Just
number.
one more vote than what he had.
Exactly. He didn't say it as precisely as you did,
Yeah.
but that's what he was
I
saying.
think he did say that
Yes,
precisely.
okay. I don't, but anyway, regardless. So ever since then, Fani Willis has been working on this case. That is a devoted public servant and somebody that should be drawing praise and little or no, and you know how critical I am of people in general, but little or no criticism, but tremendous praise because of the civic duty that she's done not only for the people of Georgia, but for the people of the United States and beyond. So anyway, but we want to get your take on the allegations around her,
Right.
surrounding her personal conduct.
This is another example of how Trump and the co-defendants, their strategy of throwing a bunch of muck against the wall and hoping some of it sticks. And when they're throwing it, they don't care whether the muck has any legal merit or not. And this is how the Trump's lawyer. I don't say this lightly. I'm a law professor. One of the things I teach is what we call legal ethics or professional responsibility. The rules that say there's certain things that lawyers are supposed to do, and certain things lawyers are not supposed to do. And when you do the naughty things, this is when you get punished. When you can get your license suspended, or you can be disbarred, or if you're representing somebody in a case, this is relevant to when a lawyer can be disqualified from an ongoing case, right? So I teach this. I spend a lot of time trying to emphasize to my students that this is extremely important, and to be doing this when you have not just the former president of the United States, and I hope he remains former, right? But also lawyers, some very prominent lawyers, very experienced, and these are not just little ambulance chasing lawyers.
They're not public defenders.
Right. No. Public defenders are the highest. Public defenders are the highest in my esteem, right? But to see these lawyers advancing some of these arguments that are so I will just say frivolous is the most polite word, is really disturbing to me, right? So one of the strategies, tactics that they pulled in this case, because they see this case really has a lot of steam. They see that there's a lot behind it.
Case.
They've got evidence that, as far as I and anybody else has been able to see, because it hasn't gone to trial yet, but from what we're able to see, stuff looks pre-compelling an attempt to manipulate and interfere with the election. And they see a prosecution team that are taking very strong positions and really pursuing this case from what I can tell, and I'm not a criminal law expert, but from what I can see, they're doing a very methodical and careful job of lining up the evidence and of preparing their case to put in front of the jury.
And if I might add, Fani Willis is already an expert on implementing the RICO Act.
Yep.
And she's already, and with the help of the man that she's supposedly involved with.
Well, she admitted that they was involved.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
But my thing is, what did that got to do with Trump's case?
So regardless, that man, Nathan Wade, I believe is his name, he has done an excellent job and has earned his pay as the lead, prosecutor.
Yeah, special prosecutor.
And part of the proof of that is the simple fact that 4 of the 19 indicted co-conspirators in this case have already pleaded guilty
Yep.
and are giving evidence
Yep.
to
They've turned
support.
state's evidence. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's what they're faced with. So I get it. You're a defense lawyer. Their job is to represent their clients who are the defendant. They've got to advance the argument. But what they've done here is to try to derail this entire prosecution. So they filed a motion to dismiss the case and or to disqualify both Fani Willis and Attorney Wade, which would mean they would have to be replaced by somebody else, which would take a certain amount of time, right? And the grounds are, again, this hodgepodge. It's this just random. It's like they sat down and thought, what can we argue? So mostly it's an alleged conflict of interest argument they're trying to make, and then there are a few other technical arguments that are less interesting. At the heart of their supposed conflict of interest claim is what we now know is a fact. At the time they raised it, it was not established as a fact that at some point Fani Willis and Attorney Wade have been in a personal relationship, okay? The suggestion when they filed their motion, what they were hinting at, or the innuendo, was that they were already in this relationship before he was appointed, right, which was in 2021, right, and that she picked him because, he was her boyfriend, right, and that she had this personal interest. She was trying to give him a favor because of their personal relationship. She picked him not because he was a competent and qualified person to bring this case, and because it would benefit her personally by having her, this
It's a way of funneling money
in the job, and partly financially, right? Yeah. So they've alleged, it's like she's just trying to, give her partner, her romantic partner or whatever, a job on the taxpayer's dime, and that the money that he's getting paid, some of it she's benefiting. They claim he's been paying for lavish vacations for them out of this money, and that all of this is part of her scheme to just aggrandize herself. Another one of their arguments is that the whole prosecution, she's motivated not by a belief. A prosecutor's not, again, it's misconduct. Not that they're not supposed to. Prosecutor's not, they can get in trouble. They don't often get in trouble for this, but they're supposed to get in trouble for this. If you bring a case where the prosecutor does not, in fact, believe that they have a sound legal basis for the case, their claim is she's bringing this case because it's going to bring her publicity and somehow that's going to make her rich. It's, again, a lot of chutzpah for them to bring a case where they're the ones who are churning the publicity. Yes, of course there's a lot of publicity. One of the defendants is the President of the United States and involves a presidential election. Of course, there's always going to be publicity. So that's their conflict of interest. So now the latest development is just the other day, I guess. Fani Willis filed, strictly speaking, the state, but in her capacity as the district attorney, filed a response to this motion, opposition to the motion. Okay, it's very well written. It's very direct. There are points where it's pretty strong, where I think I think appropriately showing some real anger that this is being dredged up. But bottom line, yes, as part of this, District Attorney Willis and Attorney Wade acknowledge that they have been in a personal relationship. Now, what they say, let me say this. When they submit this is a document submitted to court. When a lawyer submits a document to a court and signs it, that lawyer is doing that, not just under penalty of law, but that, the lawyer is representing that what I say here is true to the best of my knowledge, and if what I say is knowingly false, that lawyer can lose their license, okay? Or face other sanctions from the court, okay? So I'm not willing to assume that this document is anything other than the truth to the best of the knowledge of District Attorney Willis who submitted. And it is accompanied by a sworn affidavit by Attorney Wade. Again, he's subject to criminal penalties for perjury, and as a lawyer, he would be subject to losing his license or other professional discipline if what he said is untrue. What they say is that they've known each other, and apparently this is very well established, they've known each other for some time professionally. Apparently when she, either when she was a new lawyer or at some point she got appointed, and he was kind of designated as her mentor through the bar. So they've known each other professionally. Okay.
So we're going to have to cut you off
Okay.
there, and because we're just about out of time.
Okay.
But the bottom line
Yeah.
is, even all of the legal experts that have spoken publicly about this issue
It doesn't
made the
none
same
of this
point
is- yeah.
that you're making,
Yeah.
Eric, and that is
Yeah.
that none of this is legally.
It's not a conflict of interest.
Exactly. So-
People may have an opinion about whether it's appropriate or not.
Right.
People are entitled to that opinion. It's completely irrelevant. The aspersions on attorney this Wade, he's been a lawyer for 25 years. He's got plenty of experience.
As I said
Yeah.
earlier,
Yeah.
Wade obviously has done an excellent job.
They wouldn't be
Has
trying
been
to get rid of him otherwise.
Exactly.
And as
That's-
you said, it's time to end this
Yeah.
show.
And as always,
Yes,
it's
thank
been a
you.
pleasure.
Time always goes too fast when
Yeah,
we're
and
talking to
remember
fellas. Yeah.
that in
And
our unity lies our strength.